And lots of campaigning groups and also developing countries are saying that the Kyoto Protocol is a make or break issue here. What's Russia's stance on this?
I would say that it is definitely a deliberate simplification of the issue. The issue is wider than that. We are talking about our efforts to effectively address the climate change issue, and as such, the Kyoto Protocol per se, in its present shape, does not provide an opportunity to address the issue effectively. Mm-hmm. We do not say actually that we hate or love the Kyoto Protocol. Actually, I would say that we highly actually estimate Kyoto Protocol. That was the first and very revolutionary instrument in the field of the environment protection. But now, in the 21st century, when we have so many other countries with an income quite high, that actually, for instance, many countries with economies in transition that belong to developing countries are formally grouping. So that would not help us actually to deal with the issue of climate change as provided by science. Mm-hmm. So we simply would like to enhance the effectiveness of the international efforts to address the climate change issue. Mm-hmm. Just a second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol would cover only 30% of the global emissions. Would it be wise actually to proceed in this way? Of course not. So this is a deliberate simplification, or I would say the deliberate exaggeration of the positions.
But many of the campaigners would acknowledge it only covers 20 to 30% of emissions, but they'd say the answer isn't to kind of jump ship out of the back door, isn't to scrap this agreement, because it's the only legally binding instrument that we have in place, and without it we have nothing.
Hey, who told you that actually? We are the masters of the world, we are the people, mm-hmm. and we have to decide about the future. So that belongs to the politicians, to NGOs, to governments, and to all of us, to diplomats as my humble self. Mm-hmm. So we want to elaborate the regime that would provide the framing for the common efforts of all the countries. We do respect the issue of common but differentiated responsibility. For sure, no problem with that. One of the basics of the Rio Conventions. But we definitely would like the adequate standing for the efforts of the developed and developing countries. Mm-hmm. And of course, we would like to include the developing countries into this basket or into the circle of those countries that are acting together to provide for effective solutions. Mm-hmm. As simple as that.
And do you think the industrialized world has shown the leadership that their historic responsibility for climate change demands of them?
Stop. I would like first to say that the issue of historical responsibility is not something that has already been accepted. We are actually lawyers, diplomats, and those dealing with the climate change. We are not talking actually in terms of these, just the public opinions and judgments. We are talking in terms of the principles enshrined in the text. We are talking in terms of the texts available in the bodies of the convention. So historical responsibility is not something that we have neither in the convention nor in protocol. That first. Secondly, the historical responsibility in 21st century, guys, it has to be acknowledged. This is something different, isn't it actually? 20th century, that's fine, but now actually some countries, they invite us to leave the future with the recipes that stems out from the past. Mm-hmm. It is not correct from the terms of science, economy, policy. So again, the developing countries are well aware about that. As for industrialized world, of course, I believe that the industrialized countries, they are willing to show their leadership and to contribute their share of responsibility. So it is actually clearly reflected in the process of the association to the so-called Copenhagen Accord, which is fine. Mm-hmm. And so I believe this position should be made absolutely clear.
And just finally, the Copenhagen Accord, of course, there's a gigaton gap.
Say it again?
The Copenhagen Accord, there's a gigaton gap between the commitments made and what the science demands. So if we're talking about the necessity of the science, what are the prospects for meeting that kind of?
This is actually something that has to be addressed in terms of the practicalities. Uh-huh. We are in Russia, for instance, have a very colloquial saying. You may say 100 times honey, but if you don't have any real substance in your mouth, you would not enjoy it. So the problem is that if you talk about the level of so-called ambitions, so often referred to by our colleagues from, for instance, European Union or other group of countries. So we have to acknowledge that we do have certain limits stemming from the real level of the developments of countries. And of course, we support the bottom-up approach, but not top-down approach. If we say that we have all of a sudden actually to achieve 5 degrees actually goal or 0 degree goal and millions of tons of emissions, would it actually lead to anywhere these lip service? Would it be actually feasible and implementable? We are serious about our commitments. We want to commit to what we can really achieve, and not only we want to commit to what we can to achieve, we want others to take the commitments that are achievable and verifiable and comparable. So this is not an easy issue.
So can Russia foresee an accord then which actually might condemn many countries to horrendous impacts from climate change?
Condemn? Why are you saying condemn? It's just contrary, because we are seeking an agreement that would be a conducive for effective solution of the problem.
But if the science says that we're heading to 3 to 4 degrees, then many countries are going to suffer horrendous consequences. Is that not the case?
Let's check what the science said. And if you look into the documents, you would say the discrepancies in the documents. So when we talk about the level of ambition, the horrendous actually impact on so many countries, me as a diplomat and a lawyer, I would prefer to speak in terms, as I told you, specific language that is available. So far, the science says that, according to the recommendation of the technical paper of the IPCC, not the one referred to in the documents like the resume for the politicians, but the real stuff. Mm-hmm. So it indicates the range of 10 to 40 for developed countries. Mm-hmm. Check the document in my hand. It talks about 25 to 40 for Annex 1 countries. Mm-hmm. Huge difference. Who is now developed countries? You check the list of the OECD, you would see the real difference, who is developed and who is underdeveloped. Mm-hmm. So this is our preference, to talk through the language which is quite specific.
Oleg, thank you for joining us. Just to ask finally, what do you think the headlines will be at the end of this talk?
The headlines?
What do you think the newspapers will say in Russia?
To be absolutely frank with you, I do not believe that this issue is very popular domestically. You're asking me the question about the Russia's public opinion about that. We are undergoing the very difficult process of economic development. So, okay, I have to be honest with you. I do not believe that this is something that might be on the cover pages.
Okay. Thank you very much, Oleg. It's been interesting to talk to you.